The council chamber was massive, larger than any building had ever seen on Earth. It floated in the void of space, a neutral ground where no single species held power. Through the transparent walls, he could see dozens of ships from different worlds. Some looked like crystals, others moved like living creatures. Humanity's ship was small and plain by comparison. Stood at his podium trying not to show his nervousness. He was only 32 years old, too young for this job, but Earth had chosen him anyway. His job was simple: represent humanity to the galaxy, keep them safe, keep them liked. "The fleet has entered the system," announced the Council Prime. The alien looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. Its voice echoed in everyone's mind rather than through their ears. "3 colonies are in danger. We must decide how to respond." Had heard about the everyone had. They were 3 meters tall with armor-plated skin that grew naturally from their bodies. They lived for war. Their entire civilization was built around conquest. They had destroyed 12 other species in the past century alone. "We should evacuate," said the representative. They looked like giant crabs with too many eyes. "Pull back our people. Abandon the outer colonies. It's the only logical choice." "Abandon them," another voice rose in protest. The representative stood up, its feathers ruffling in anger. "Those are living beings. We can't just leave them to die." "Then what do you suggest?" the shot back. "They have 200 warships. They have weapons that can crack a planet's crust. What can we do against that?" The chamber fell silent, looked around at the dozens of species present. Some were brilliant scientists. Others were master engineers or gifted artists, but none of them were warriors. The galaxy had been at peace for so long that most species had forgotten how to fight. Well, almost all of them. The Council Prime's attention turned to Ambassador. "Humanity has been part of this council for 10 cycles now. We have seen your people's talents in medicine and agriculture, but we have never discussed your military capabilities. What can Earth contribute to this defense?" Every eye in the chamber focused on. This was the moment he had been dreading since he took this job. He had been briefed extensively before leaving Earth. He knew exactly what to say. He just hated saying it. "Humanity has no military fleet," said slowly. "We don't have warships or weapons designed for space combat." "None at all," they sounded surprised. "Our culture evolved past violence a long time ago," continued. He made his voice sound slightly ashamed, like he was admitting a weakness. "In our ancient history, yes, we fought wars, but that was thousands of years ago. We chose a different path. We focused on art, science, philosophy. We became a peaceful people." It wasn't entirely a lie. Humanity had chosen peace. They just hadn't mentioned what that choice really meant. "No standing army, no soldier class," pressed another representative. "We have security forces for keeping order," explained. "But nothing that could stand against a species like the. We're farmers and teachers and doctors. We wouldn't know the first thing about fighting a space war." The Council Prime seemed to accept this. "I see. Then humanity will focus on providing medical support and refugee assistance. We appreciate your honesty, Ambassador." Bowed slightly and sat down. He felt the weight of dozens of stares, some pitying, some disappointed. The galaxy saw humanity as weak now, harmless, exactly as Earth wanted. The council meeting dragged on for hours. They argued about strategy, about which colonies to defend and which to abandon. They were moving fast. Intelligence reports showed their fleet was already approaching the first colony world. They had 72 hours, maybe less. After the meeting ended, returned to his ship. It was a small diplomatic vessel, barely armed, designed to look as non-threatening as possible. He sealed himself in his private quarters and activated the quantum communicator, the one that wasn't on any official registry. A face appeared on his screen. Admiral, Earth's actual military commander. She looked tired. "How did it go?" "They believe us," said. "They think we're helpless." Good. His expression didn't change. Keep it that way as long as possible. How long until the fleet arrives? 60 hours. Captain is leading the strike force. 20 ships, all stealth capable. They'll jump in system just before the reach 7. Felt his stomach twist. Only 20, they have 200. 20 is enough. His voice was cold, certain. Trust the plan, Ambassador. We've been preparing for this scenario for 50 years. Humanity knows how to fight. We just choose not to advertise it. After the call ended, sat in the darkness of his quarters. He thought about his grandfather, who had taught him about Earth's real history. Not the sanitized version they showed the galaxy, but the truth. Humanity had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. They had invented weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. They had built machines that could end all life on their planet. They had come within minutes of total extinction, more times than anyone wanted to count. And then finally they had stopped, not because they were weak or cowardly, but because they understood. They looked at what they had become and were horrified. So they chose peace. Real peace, backed by the certain knowledge of what war truly cost. But choosing peace didn't mean forgetting how to fight. It meant knowing exactly how to fight and choosing not to unless absolutely necessary. The galaxy thought humanity was weak because they had no weapons on display, no warrior culture, no combat fleet in their official registry. The galaxy was wrong. Pulled up the classified file on his personal terminal. It showed Earth's actual military capability. Ships hidden in asteroid fields. Weapons platforms disguised as research stations. Soldiers trained from childhood in tactics and strategy, then given civilian jobs and told to wait, to hope they would never be needed. But if they were needed, they would be ready. He looked out at the stars and wondered what the galaxy would think of humanity after this. Would they be grateful, angry, terrified? Probably all three. On 7, the colony's governor was ordering an evacuation. 12,000 civilians were preparing to leave their homes. They loaded onto transport ships with whatever they could carry. Most of them were crying. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the fleet was coming. They had conquered 12 species before. They expected this to be just as easy. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Stood in her laboratory watching the last evacuation ship lift off into the purple sky of 7. She should have been on that ship. Everyone else from the research station had already left. But she stayed behind with her microscope and her samples and 5 years' worth of data that couldn't be replaced. The indigenous creatures of 7 were unique in the galaxy. They could survive without water for months. Understanding how they did it could change medicine forever. She wasn't about to abandon that research because some warlike species was throwing a tantrum. Her communicator beeped. The screen showed his face. He looked worried. "What are you still doing there? The fleet will arrive in 72 hours. "I'm aware," she said, not looking up from her microscope. "I'm documenting the cellular structure of the beetles. Did you know they can?" His voice was sharp now. "You need to leave, right now. This isn't a suggestion." She finally looked at him, was usually calm, always diplomatic. She had never heard him sound like this before. "I can negotiate with them," she said. "You told the council we're peaceful. Maybe if I just explain that I'm a scientist, that I'm not a threat." Listen to me very carefully, leaned closer to the camera. "That was a lie, all of it." She blinked. "What?" "Humanity isn't peaceful because we don't know how to fight. We're peaceful because we're too good at fighting. We chose to stop because we understood what we were capable of." Set down her tools. Her hands were suddenly shaking. "What are you talking about?" For the next 20 minutes explained everything. He told her about Earth's real history, about the wars that killed millions, about the weapons that nearly ended their species, about the decision Earth's government made when they first encountered alien life: hide the truth, appear weak. Let the galaxy think humans were harmless academics and artists. "It was safer that way," said. If the galaxy knew what we were really capable of, they would have destroyed us out of fear, or tried to use us as weapons. Either way, we couldn't let them know. "So what happens now?" asked quietly. "Now Earth Command is sending the fleet, the real fleet, the one that's not in any official registry. They'll be there before they arrive." "How many ships?" 20. Laughed, but it came out bitter. "They have 200. What are 20 ships going to do?" "Enough." His face was stone. "Trust me. Get to the underground shelters. Stay there until you receive an all-clear signal. Don't come out before then, no matter what you hear." After he disconnected, sat in her empty laboratory for a long time. She thought about every interaction she had ever had with other species. The way they looked at humans with gentle amusement. The way they patted her on the head like a child when she accomplished something. The way they always seemed slightly surprised when a human was actually good at something. And humans had let them think that, had encouraged it, had built an entire diplomatic strategy around appearing harmless. She gathered her most important samples and sealed them in protective cases. Then she headed down to the shelter system beneath the colony. It was a massive network of tunnels designed to protect the colonists from the planet's harsh weather. Now it would protect them from something much worse. The shelters were crowded. About 300 people had stayed behind for various reasons. Some were stubborn researchers like her. Others were maintenance workers keeping the colony's essential systems running. A few were just too sick or too old to travel. "Did you hear?" an old man said as found a place to sit. "They say human ships are coming." "Where did you hear that?" asked. "Military broadcast. Encrypted, but someone cracked it. 20 ships, they said." He shook his head. "Poor fools, they'll be destroyed." Didn't correct him. She just closed her eyes and waited. Above them, in the cold vacuum of space, something was happening. Hidden all across Earth's solar system were hangar bays that no alien scanner had ever detected. They were built into asteroids, disguised as mining operations, camouflaged with every trick human engineers could devise. Now those hangars were opening. The ships that emerged looked nothing like the small diplomatic vessels the galaxy associated with humanity. These were sharp, angular, predatory. They didn't have elegant curves or bright colors. They were dark gray and black, designed to absorb sensor waves rather than reflect them. Captain stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and watched his fleet assemble. 20 ships. His entire strike force. It didn't sound like much compared to the Armada, but each of these vessels represented 50 years of secret military development. Each one carried weapons the galaxy had never seen. Each one was crewed by men and women who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. "Status report," said. "All ships ready, Captain," his second officer replied. "Jump calculations complete. We can leave when you give the order." Was 28 years old. He had been in military training since he was 6. He had studied every war in human history, every battle, every tactic. He had learned from Alexander the Great and Sun and Khan. He had studied the world wars and the Cold War and all the small, brutal conflicts in between. And through all that study, one lesson had become clear. Wars were won by the side that understood war best. Not the side with the most ships or the biggest weapons, but the side that truly comprehended what war was. "Take us in," he said quietly. The fleet jumped. They didn't use the standard jump lanes that other species relied on. Human ships could jump from anywhere, using calculations so complex that most species' computers couldn't even process them. It was one of humanity's secret advantages. One of many. They emerged at the edge of the system, far enough out that the sensors wouldn't detect them. Not yet. Wanted to see what they were dealing with first. "Scan the fleet," he ordered. The image appeared on the main screen. 200 ships, just as intelligence had reported. They were massive, brutal-looking things. Each one bristled with weapons. They moved in a tight formation, confident and aggressive. studied them carefully. He noted their positions, their spacing, their formation patterns. He could already see weaknesses. They fought like warriors honorably, directly. They announced their presence. They challenged their enemies. They believed in a fair fight. Humans had stopped believing in fair fights about 10,000 years ago. Stealth systems active, his tactical officer reported. They can't see us. Good, move us closer. I want to be in optimal firing position before we announce ourselves. In the shelter on 7, felt the ground shake slightly. Something was happening up there. She could hear it through tons of rock and metal, the sound of a war beginning. She thought about the coming to kill them. She thought about the 20 human ships moving to stop them. She thought about all the lies humanity had told to the galaxy. And she wondered what the truth would cost them. Sat on his command throne and watched the planet of 7 grow larger on his. This would be an easy conquest. His scouts had reported minimal defenses, a few thousand civilians with no military training. They would surrender quickly or die. Either way was acceptable. The Empire had conquered 12 species in the last century. Each conquest made them stronger. Each victory proved their superiority. This would be no different. His sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting ships entering the system." Leaned forward with interest. "Coalition reinforcements." "No, sir, the signatures are human." "Human?" laughed. The sound echoed through the bridge. His officers joined in. Humans were the weakest species in the galaxy. They had no weapons, no warriors, no spine. The council kept them around because they were good at growing food and healing the sick. "How many ships?" 20, sir." The laughter grew louder. 20 ships against his armada of 200. It was almost insulting. These pathetic creatures must not understand basic mathematics. "Open a channel," ordered. "Let's see what they want." A human face appeared on the screen. He was young, with dark hair and calm eyes. Too calm, didn't like that calmness. "This is Captain of the UES Retribution," the human said. His voice was steady and flat. "Fleet, you have entered human-protected space. Withdraw immediately or we will engage." Some amusement turned to anger. "You dare threaten me? You peaceful fools have no warriors, no weapons that can harm us. Your ambassador told the council himself that." "We lied," interrupted. His expression didn't change at all. "Withdraw now. This is your only warning." The human's face disappeared from the screen, stared at the blank display for a moment, then roared with rage. "All ships, attack formation. Destroy those insects." The fleet surged forward like a tidal wave of metal and fury. 200 ships against 20. It should have been a massacre. For the first 60 seconds, nothing happened. The human ships just sat there in space, not moving, not responding, smiled. They were frozen with fear. They had realized their mistake too late. Then the human ships moved. They didn't charge forward like honorable warriors. They split apart, scattering in different directions. Targeting systems tried to lock on but couldn't get a clean reading. The human ships were doing something to his sensors, making themselves appear in multiple places at once. "Fire at will," ordered. "Destroy them all." His fleet opened fire. Plasma beams and missile barrages filled the space between the two forces, but the humans weren't where the weapons were aimed. They had already moved, shifting positions faster than ships could track. Then the humans fired back. Had expected energy weapons, plasma cannons, the standard armaments every species used. What he got instead was something much simpler and much more terrifying. Objects appeared on his sensors. Small, fast, no energy signatures, just solid metal moving at impossible speeds. His tactical officer barely had time to shout a warning before the first one hit. The battleship Conqueror exploded. Not from an energy blast that its shields could have absorbed, but from pure kinetic impact. The object had struck with so much force that it simply punched through the ship from bow to stern, and the resulting destruction tore the vessel apart. "What was that?" demanded. "I don't know, sir. They're just metal rods, solid tungsten, no explosives, no warheads, just mass and velocity." Another rod struck another ship, then another. The fleet was in chaos now. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds, and there was no way to dodge something moving that fast. By the time their sensors detected the rods, they had already hit. But that was just the beginning. The human ships released clouds of smaller craft. Drones, thousands of them, each one carrying a simple explosive. They swarmed the fleet like insects, too small and too numerous to shoot down effectively. They attached themselves to ship hulls and detonated, not causing massive damage but disabling sensors, weapon systems, communication arrays. His fleet couldn't coordinate anymore. Each ship was fighting alone, blind, confused. Then the human ships did something that made his blood run cold. They stopped attacking his larger vessels and started targeting his fighter screens instead. They ignored the obvious threats and went after the small ships, the ones carrying most of his pilots. It was a psychological tactic. Every pilot who died had a family, a clan, a history. Watching their fighters explode one after another was breaking his crew's morale faster than losing battleships would have. "They're not fighting like warriors," his second-in-command whispered. "They're fighting like demons." And they were. The humans used every dirty trick had ever heard of and 100 he hadn't. They hid in debris fields. They used, owned destroyed ships as cover. They hacked into communication channels and sent false orders. They launched missiles, then detonated them early to create shrapnel clouds that damaged everything nearby. They fought like they had spent thousands of years, learning how to kill each other efficiently. Because they had. Watched the battle from his command chair. His expression never changed. He wasn't angry or excited or afraid. He was just focused, calculating, processing information and making decisions faster than any organic computer. "Tactical status report," he said. 97 ships destroyed or disabled. 0 human casualties. They're starting to break formation. "Good, deploy the Ghost Protocol." His tactical officer hesitated. "Sir, are you sure that's extreme?" "Do it." New orders went out to the fleet. Each human ship activated a special system that had never been used in actual combat before. It projected false sensor images, making each human ship appear to be 10 ships. Suddenly, from the perspective, they were no longer fighting 20 vessels. They were fighting 200. Stared at his sensor display in horror. Where had these ships come from? They hadn't detected any new arrivals. Unless they had been hidden all along. Unless every reading he had gotten since the battle started had been a lie. "Retreat," he finally screamed. "All ships retreat now." But retreating from humans was harder than attacking them. The human ships pursued, picking off stragglers. They didn't let the disengage cleanly. They harried them, hunted them, drove them like prey animals. By the time the surviving ships finally jumped out of the system, had lost 118 vessels, more than half his fleet, the greatest military disaster in history. And the humans had lost nothing. In the shelter on 7, heard the sounds of battle finally stop. The ground had been shaking for 6 hours straight. Now there was only silence. Her communicator beeped. It was a message from Captain, transmitted to all survivors. "This is Captain to 7 colonists. The fleet has been repelled. You may return to the surface. The planet is secure." People around her started crying with relief. They hugged each other and thanked whatever gods they believed in, but just sat there, thinking about what had just happened. Humanity had just revealed its true nature to the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again. Above the planet's fleet gathered in formation. They were battered but intact. Every ship had returned. Every crew member had survived. "Set course for the council chambers," ordered. "I suspect Ambassador is going to need support." His second officer looked at him. "Sir, what do you think they'll do when they see what we're capable of?" Was quiet for a moment. "They'll be afraid, and that's exactly what we need them to be." The council chamber was silent as the battle recordings played. Every member watched the screens in growing horror. They saw the fleet, mighty and unstoppable, reduced to scattered wreckage in 6 hours. They saw tactics that none of them had ever encountered. They saw a kind of warfare that made their civilized minds recoil. When the recording ended, all eyes turned to. He stood at his podium, waiting. He had known this moment would come. He had prepared for it, but that didn't make it easier. The Council Prime spoke first. Its voice, usually calm and melodious, now carried an edge of something that might have been fear. "You lied to us, Ambassador. You claimed your species was peaceful. You said you had no military capability." "We are peaceful," replied carefully. "We choose peace every day. We choose not to use violence unless absolutely necessary. That doesn't mean we've forgotten how." "Those tactics," the representative said, his voice was shaking. "That brutality, you didn't just defeat you hunted them like animals. You used psychological warfare, deception, ambush. That's not how civilized species fight." "You're right," said. "That's not how civilized species fight. That's how humans fight. Because we learned a long time ago that there's no such thing as civilized warfare. War is violence. War is horror. Pretending otherwise just gets more people killed." "But you told us." "I know what I told you, and I'm sorry for the deception. But understand this, we didn't lie because we're ashamed. We lied because we're afraid. We're afraid of what we can do. We're afraid of what we might become if we don't constantly choose peace." The representative stood up, its feathers bristling with agitation. "How many ships does Earth actually have? Your records show only diplomatic vessels and research ships, but clearly you have more." Took a breath. "Enough." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I can give. We have enough ships to defend ourselves and our allies. We have enough ships to ensure peace. Beyond that, the exact number is classified." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Species shouted at each other and at. The Council Prime had to use its authority to restore order. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," the Prime said. "We need to know the full extent of human military capability. Ambassador, we request that Earth send a representative to explain your martial history." 3 days later, arrived at the council chambers. She was a professor of human history, specializing in military conflicts. She was 67 years old with gray hair and kind eyes. She looked like someone's grandmother, which made what she had to say even more disturbing. "Thank you for inviting me," she began. "I understand you want to know about humanity's relationship with war. I'll be honest with you, it's not a pleasant story." She brought up a holographic display showing Earth's history. Humans have existed as a species for about 300,000 years. For most of that time, we survived by hunting and gathering. But about 12,000 years ago, we discovered agriculture. We started forming permanent settlements, and that's when warfare truly began. The council members watched as the display showed ancient human armies with primitive weapons, spears and bows and swords. "For the next 11,000 years we fought constantly," continued. "We fought over territory, resources, religion, ideology, pride. We invented new and better ways to kill each other. Bronze weapons, then iron, then steel. Gunpowder changed everything. Suddenly, any person could kill from a distance. Wars became deadlier." The display showed massive battles, millions of soldiers, cities burning. "In our 20th century, we had 2 world wars. The first killed 17 million people. The second killed 75 million, 3% of our entire species, dead in 6 years." Several council members made sounds of distress. Those numbers were incomprehensible to species that had never experienced war on that scale. "And then we invented nuclear weapons," said quietly. bombs that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We built tens of thousands of them. We pointed them at each other. For 50 years, we lived under the threat of total extinction. One mistake, one miscommunication, and our entire species could have ended. But you survived, the Council Prime said. You chose peace. Eventually, yes, but not before we learned exactly what we were capable of. We know how to wage total war. We know how to destroy civilizations. We know how to make weapons that can end all life on a planet. We've done the calculations. We've run the simulations. We've stood at the edge of extinction and looked down. His expression was sad now. And that knowledge never goes away. You can't unknow something. Every human child learns this history. Every human engineer understands the physics of these weapons. Every human strategist studies the old campaigns, the old battles, the old tactics. So you kept the weapons? A council member asked, horrified. No, we destroyed most of them, but we kept something more dangerous. We kept the knowledge. You can destroy a weapon, but you can't destroy an idea. We know how to build anything we destroyed. We can do it faster than you can imagine. Our entire industrial base, our entire education system, is designed so that if we ever needed to, we could mobilize for total war within months. The chamber was deathly quiet. Every species present was beginning to understand the magnitude of what they were dealing with. Why, they asked. Why keep that knowledge? Why not forget? Why not move on? Because forgetting is dangerous, said. If we forgot what war truly costs, we might stumble into it again. Our fear of war is what keeps us peaceful. We remember every battle, every casualty, every ruined city. We count the dead and learn their names. We make sure every generation understands what violence really means. So humanity is peaceful because you're afraid? The Prime asked. Yes, but also no, chose her words carefully. We're peaceful because we choose to be, but that choice is informed by knowledge. We know exactly what we're choosing not to do. Every day, every human makes that choice. To build instead of destroy, to heal instead of harm, to talk instead of fight. And we make that choice because we know the alternative. Spoke up. They only understand strength. They wouldn't have stopped attacking council worlds. They needed to see power. They needed to understand that continuing their aggression would cost them everything, so we showed them. And now, the Council Prime asked, what happens now? We can't unknow what you are. We can't forget what we've seen. No, you can't, agreed. And I won't insult you by asking you to trust us. Trust has to be earned. All I can tell you is this: humanity has chosen peace. We will continue to choose peace. But we will also defend ourselves and our allies with every tool we have. If that makes you uncomfortable, I understand, but it's the truth. The council deliberated for 3 days. Behind closed doors, they argued about what to do with humanity. Some wanted to expel them from the council. Others wanted to place restrictions on human activities. A few suggested trying to destroy Earth before humans became too powerful. But in the end, they made a different choice, because the galaxy was dangerous. They weren't the only threat out there, and having someone who truly understood violence, who could fight when necessary, might not be such a bad thing. As long as they could control it, as long as humanity remained on their side. That was the real question. Could anyone control humans, or had the council just invited a predator into their home? Only time would tell. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Seven. The galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and obvious. The Empire sued for peace within a week of their defeat, was executed by his own people for losing so badly. The new leadership signed treaties, agreed to borders, promised to behave. They had learned a hard lesson. There were things in the galaxy more dangerous than they were. But the real change was in how everyone looked at humanity. Captain walked through the corridors of the council station and felt the difference. Other species moved out of his way now. They didn't meet his eyes. When he entered a room, conversation stopped. The friendly curiosity that humans had once received was gone, replaced by nervous fear. He found in an observation lounge, staring out at the stars. "They're afraid of us now," said, standing beside him. Yes, his voice was tired. "Maybe we should have stayed hidden longer. Maybe we could have found another way." "Or maybe this is better," suggested. "Fear breeds caution. Caution prevents war. They aren't the only aggressive species out there. Now everyone knows what happens if they push too far." Turn to face him. Is that what we are now? The galaxy's monster, the thing they keep in the basement to scare away the real threats? If that's what it takes to keep the peace, then yes. And if they decide we're too dangerous, what if the entire council turns against us? Was quiet for a moment. "Then we defend ourselves, same as we always have, but I don't think it will come to that. They need us now, they just don't want to admit it." He was right. Over the next few weeks, the council began to see the benefits of having humanity as an ally. Pirates who had been harassing shipping lanes for decades suddenly disappeared. Warlords in frontier systems heard about the Battle of Seven and reconsidered their ambitions. The galaxy became more peaceful, not because everyone loved each other, but because everyone was afraid of what would happen if they stepped out of line. It was a young human diplomat named who proposed the formal solution. He was only 25 years old, fresh out of Earth's diplomatic academy, but he had an idea that would change everything. "Humanity should become the Council's guardians," he said at a major policy meeting. "Not conquerors, not rulers, but protectors. We patrol the dangerous regions. We respond to threats. We train other species in defensive tactics, but we never seek power. We never initiate conflict. Our purpose is to ensure peace." The Council Prime considered this. "Like an ancient concept from your world. Nuclear deterrence, you called it." "Exactly," said. "The weapon exists to never be used. Its purpose is to make war unthinkable. Humanity becomes that for the Council. We're the option you hope you never need but you're glad exists." It took weeks of negotiation, but eventually a new treaty was signed. The Human Defense Initiative. Human ships would patrol Council space. Human advisors would help other species develop their own defensive capabilities. Human intelligence networks would watch for emerging threats. But there were strict rules. Humanity could not claim territory, could not interfere in local governance, could not initiate warfare except in response to direct threats, and everything they did would be monitored by Council observers. It was a compromise. No one was completely happy with it, but everyone could live with it. Returned to Seven to continue her research. The colony had been repaired. Life was returning to normal, but she found it hard to focus on her work. She kept thinking about what she had learned, about what humanity really was. One evening, she sat in her laboratory watching the sunset. The door opened and walked in. He looked older than he had 3 months ago. The weight of representing humanity had aged him. "How are you doing?" he asked. "I'm not sure," admitted. "I keep thinking about all the other species, the way they look at us now. We used to be the friendly ones, the helpful ones. Now we're the scary ones. Does that bother you?" "Yes, no, I don't know," she sighed. "I understand why we did it. I understand why we lied. But I wonder if we made the right choice. By showing them what we are, did we make things better or worse?" Sat down beside her. "I ask myself that question every day. I don't have a good answer, but I know this. We can't unmake the choice. We can only decide what we do next." "And what will we do?" "We'll be what they need us to be. Protectors. Guardians. The ones who understand violence well enough to prevent it. It's not the role we wanted, but it's the role we have." Across the galaxy, humanity's new role was already taking shape. Human ships patrolled the outer systems. Human advisors taught other species about defensive strategies, sensor networks, early warning systems. Human diplomats worked to resolve conflicts before they turned violent. And slowly, carefully, the galaxy began to adjust. Captain stood on the bridge of the Retribution and reviewed his patrol route. His fleet was responsible for 3 entire sectors now. It was exhausting work, but necessary. Every pirate they stopped, every conflict they prevented, was proof that humanity's power could be used for good. His second officer approached with a report. "Sir, we've received a distress call from a colony. Raiders are attacking." "Set course immediately," ordered. "Maximum speed." As his ship jumped into action, he thought about what they were doing. Not conquering, not destroying, but protecting. It was a different kind of strength than they had shown, a harder kind in some ways. It was easier to destroy than to protect, easier to take than to give. But it was the choice humanity had made. Months turned into a year. The Human Defense Initiative became an accepted part of galactic society. Species that had once feared humanity now requested their help. Children on dozens of worlds learned about the Battle of Seven in their schools, but they also learned about human medicine, human agriculture, human art. Humanity became something complex in the galactic mind. Dangerous but not cruel, powerful but not tyrannical, warriors who chose peace. Gave his final major address to the Council on the anniversary of the battle. He stood at his podium, older and wiser than the nervous young diplomat who had lied to them a year ago. "We fear war," he said. "Every human alive fears it. We fear it because we know it. We've lived it, studied it, perfected it. We know exactly what it costs. Every body counted, every city ruined, every generation." He paused, looking at each council member. "You asked us what makes humanity peaceful. This is it, our fear, our knowledge, our certainty that war is the worst thing we can do. That's what makes us choose peace. But that same knowledge makes us dangerous. Because when peace fails, when violence becomes necessary, we know exactly how to wage it. We're better at war than we want to be, better than we should be. And we will use that terrible skill to protect this council, whether you like it or not. So yes, we fear war. But what should terrify you is this: we're even better at waging it than we are at fearing it. And we will use that power to ensure peace, not because we want to rule you, not because we seek glory, but because we understand what happens when the monsters are allowed to run free. Humanity will be your sword, your shield, your last resort. We will be the violence you hope never comes. And we will carry that burden because someone has to, because the galaxy is dangerous, because peace is not natural, because it takes constant effort to choose civilization over chaos. The council chamber was silent when he finished. Then, slowly, the council prime began a gesture of respect. One by one, the other members joined in, not because they loved humanity, not because they trusted them completely, but because they understood. Sometimes peace requires monsters, and sometimes those monsters choose to protect instead of destroy. Late that night, sent a message to her family back on Earth. She told them about her work, about the colony, about the new dynamic with the other species. And at the end, she wrote, "I think we did the right thing. Not the easy thing, not the safe thing, but the right thing. We showed them what we are. And now we have to prove that what we are is worth believing in. I think we can do that. I think we will." She looked up at the stars through her laboratory window. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling. Human soldiers were standing watch. Human diplomats were preventing conflicts. Her species had become the galaxy's guardians. It was a heavy burden, but it was one they would carry, because that's what humanity did. They took on the impossible tasks. They made the hard choices. They carried the weight so others wouldn't have to. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The galaxy had learned the truth about humanity. Not that they were weak, but that they were strong. Not that they couldn't fight, but that they chose not to. Not that they were helpless, but that they were terrifyingly capable. And in learning that truth, the galaxy had become a little safer, a little more peaceful, a little more willing to choose words over weapons. Because now they knew, if they didn't choose peace, humanity would choose it for them. and no one wanted to see what that looked like. The monsters were real, but these monsters protected instead of destroyed, and sometimes that made all the difference.